it's Becky, and today we are going to talk about half square triangles. Now, I did a video a few months ago that showed you how to make half square triangles, but today I'm going to show you what you can do with those half square triangles. Now, I will be the first to tell you, if you can master a great half square triangle, you can create any type of illusion with quilting that you would like to. So if you are a beginning quilter, my best advice is learn how to press, get a great 1/4 inch seam, and master your half square triangles. Because once you have accomplished that, truly the sky is the limit, and there is nothing that can hold you back. And as you evolve, you'll find easier ways to do things. But for now, let me show you all of the wonderful things that you can do with half square triangles. All right, what is this half square triangle? Well, let's talk about that. In my opinion, it is one of the most versatile units in quilting. It's made up of 2 right angle triangles sewn together along the diagonal to create a square. Each of those triangles is exactly half of a square. That's why they're called a half square triangle. You're going to see these in every type of blocks. I'm going to show you some examples today. And the best part about these little guys is that once you've mastered them, the possibilities are endless. Now, me personally, I'm a Studio 180 enthusiast. So grab your favorite tool. And like me, if you're a Studio 180 fan, grab your Tucker trimmer and let's get stitching. I went ahead and did some mock-ups so you can see the different types of quilts you can make. And this is just a series of half square triangles that are aligned in the same direction. But again, if you are a modern quilter, it gives a very striking look to a quilt. Add some different fabrics and colors to make a beautiful, scrappy looking quilt. This block is called a pinwheel block. It's made up of light and dark colors alternating around a central point. And if you follow the stitch lines, X marks the spot. You can use this beautiful block to create different patterns within a quilt top. The next block is a square within a square. And that's made by taking one of the colors of your half square triangle and pointing them towards the center. The seam lines seem to make a diamond, so it looks like a square within a square. When you put it all together, look at the beautiful quilt that you can make. The next one is what I call a chevron block. Now, normally 2 half square triangles would make up a flying geese unit, and you can alternate your colors to give you a chevron look. You can make your chevrons go vertically, as in this quilt, or you can have horizontal chevrons to make up a beautiful quilt. When you lay out your half square triangles so that the seams all go in the same direction and alternate your colors, you can create beautiful straight lines, as in this quilt, or change them up and add some patterns and give them some flair. All right, this is one of my favorite blocks. Of course, I've saved the best for last, but this is the herringbone block, and it is created by pointing your seam lines in one direction on the top and the opposite direction on the bottom. When you put those together, add some different colors, you have got a beautiful quilt top. Wasn't that so much fun? I love all of the different ways that you can use half square triangles to add character and dimension to your quilts. Stay tuned for the rest of this video because I'm going to go through and show you different ways that you can make half square triangles. I can't wait to hear what is your favorite way to make half square triangles and to see all of the beautiful things that you've created. So continue on with me. Let's learn some more. One way to make half square triangles is to actually cut your triangles. And then what you're going to do is you are going to place those together and sew your best 1/4 inch. Now, this is a great way to use up some of those smaller pieces and scraps that you have. You can cut them into triangle, one of the downfalls that I find is that you're sewing along a biased edge. And what we know about biases is that they end up being very stretchy. Another thing that doesn't make me really happy is to get the finished sizes that I need. I have to cut my original pieces at like 2 7/8 or 5/8 or 3/8, and who likes dealing with those eighths? Another way to do your half square triangles is 2 at once method. You draw a line down the center and then you sew 1/4 inch from either side. Again, this gives you 2 at once, works really well. My biggest thing is making sure that I keep that 1/4 inch, and a lot of your patterns, again, request for you to cut things at 2 7/8 or 5 7/8. And like I said before, I don't like working with 7/8. And you need to make sure that that is a perfect 1/4 inch in order for your half square triangle to align correctly in your finished project. Now I'm going to show you my favorite way to do half square triangles. I started out with 2 squares that I've oversized, and I'm going to use my Quilter's Magic Wand. I'm going to line that beveled edge up. See that line up there? So it goes corner to corner, and I'm going to draw 2 lines on either side. These are my stitch lines. So I went ahead and I stitched on those lines, and then I cut them in half. That gives me 2 half square triangles. Then I'm going to go ahead and press those. I'm going to use my Tucker trimmer to square those up. Now today, for the sake of our demo, I'm going to square those up to 3 1/2. And I'm going to do that by using the half moon side of my Tucker trimmer. Now what's really great about the Tucker trimmer is that you have one common diagonal, and then you have these varying diagonal lines. On 1/2, you have 1/2 inch increments, and you can see those by the dotted lines. On the other half, those are whole inch increments, and you can see the solid line and the full moon is what I like to call it. So I'm going to trim these to 3 1/2, and the way that I'm going to do that is I'm looking for my primary diagonal. For this demo, I really don't need that, but it comes in really handy when I'm doing combination units or 1/4 square triangles. I'm going to line that right there on that 3 1/2 inch line right there. Now this is a lot more than what I'd normally trim off. I just want you to be able to see it for the sake of the demo. Most of the time you're barely shaving anything off. Things that I'm looking for is I want to make sure that my fabric is outside this 3 1/2 inch square. That's my final trim up. Now, I'm trimming for right-handed, so for righties, I'm going to go up and across. Now, if I'm a left-handed cutter, I'm going to shift that this way. So this tool does work for our lefties as well. And I'm going to go up the left side and across the top. But since I'm a righty, I'm going to go ahead and cut it the way that I feel most comfortable. I just want my lefties out there to know that this tool works for you as well. So, up and across. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave my tool in the same orientation. I'm going to turn my fabric 180 degrees so that purple triangle is now facing southwest. And then I'm going to line it up with that 3 1/2 inch box. Whenever I use these tools, I always say put it in the box. So when I put it, remember that your box is your final square up. Okay, so when I put that in the box, okay, my common diagonal is right there. So I'm going to go up one side and across the top. So, all right, it's kind of hard to cut when I'm filming by myself, but there I have my half square triangle. Now, so when you're using strips to cut your half square triangles, all I did is I sewed a seam line here and a seam line there and made a strip tube. Okay, this is a good way to make multiple triangles. And what you're going to do is you're actually going to line up on the seam. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut. And then you're just going to pluck that little end there, and you have your half square triangle. So you can use a traditional ruler to do this, or you might need a specialty ruler like the strip tube ruler, which works fine. But all you do is you just twist that back and forth and go down your seam. Okay, and that's another way that you can make half square triangles. Okay. So one of the pitfalls for this one is that because I sewed those crossways, this part here is going to be on the bias. So when I go to put it into my finished project, it is going to be a lot more stretchy. Make half square triangles by using paper. Again, your papers come in all different shapes and sizes. This one works perfectly for a 10-inch square, and that's what it is for. And it makes 18 2-inch finished half square triangles. So one of the biggest things is when you cut into these, so I've sewn around the lines. So you sew on the lines, which is really nice and easy. And then you can cut into them, and it gives you your finished product. So one of the pitfalls is now I have to go and remove paper. And if I forgot to change my stitch length, the paper is a little bit more challenging to take off. And if I don't cut on those lines exactly, then my half square triangles are going to be a little bit off. When you want to make your half square triangles 4 at once, what I did is I sewed a 1/4 inch around 2 squares. Then I cut them in half twice on the diagonals to give me 4 half square triangles. However, the one downfall is that these edges are going to be biased. So when you put them into your finished project, they're going to have a lot more stretch. So keep that in mind as you continue. This is the 8 at once method. I took my 2 fabrics, placed them right sides together, and I drew 2 stitch lines. Okay, and these are actually the lines that I'm going to stitch on. Now notice that these are going across the bias, So when I go to use my half square triangles, the biased edges are already sewn. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut them. And I'm going to cut, I always cut north to south first. Okay, rotate, cut it again. And then I'm going to cut between those stitch lines. Okay. There we go. And this will give you 8 half square triangles at once. Now, Studio 180 does have a technique sheet to give you the oversized measurements so that when you're finished, you can trim these down. Okay, so there's my 8 at once. Okay, so depending on what size you work with, these might have to be perfect, or if you oversize them and trim them, you have more precise units. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your love and support. If you enjoy watching our tutorials and getting some quick tips from us, please like, follow, and subscribe so we can continue to bring you more. Until next time, my friends, happy quilting.